You should never feel ashamed to ask for help. Speak with someone now by dialing 988. Connect with people you can trust. Text or call 988.
Welcome to the society.
Before we descend into madness, please be advised that the following program contains topics and cases describing graphic violence, strong sexual content, explicit language, and elements that may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to a world where darkness and mystery converge. Navigate the depths of horror and true crime and join a society beyond the ordinary, where buzzworthy topics, paranormal tales, and listener-submitted experiences blend into a realm of the unknown. You have crossed into a place where the unusual and the terrifying are just the beginning. My name is Ralph Anthony, and welcome to the Scream Society podcast. Hello, Screamers. After a week of adults attacking minors at pumpkin patches, McDonald's spreading E. coli, and watching alleged reality TV stars crash and burn in political social experiments, it is safe to say Earth has been feeling a little hellish lately. Hope you're all coping in this chaos. Thanks for listening in. I feel like we have a lot to talk about this episode. Halloween is 2 days away, and I am super sad that spooky season is almost over. And at the same time, I am somewhat relieved. I feel like this month has just been go nonstop, and I haven't really had a chance to really sit with my thoughts, really have time to reflect and all of that. And it's starting to become a little overwhelming. Not to mention, the holidays are around the corner. But beside that, the reason why I mentioned that Halloween is 2 days away is because I received this spooky little submission that I felt would be fun to open the episode up with. Take a listen to this. Are you familiar with the Goosebumps book, The Haunted Mask? If not, it's a story of a girl who purchases a haunted mask to get back at and scare all of her high school bullies. The plan backfires and the mask gets stuck on her face, becoming a part of her. Don't get too excited. I wasn't a victim of a ghostly mask, but possibly a victim of a horrible prankster. I bought this creepy doll mask from a Halloween store that wasn't a spirit Halloween store. When I came to put it on at a party I was at, it felt moist inside, but stupid me had dismissed this as condensation from my breathing. Eventually, my face felt tight, and that's when I freaked out because the mask was indeed stuck to my skin. I started to panic and caused a scene in front of my friends and people I didn't know. If I pulled it off, it would have broke skin. After about 45 minutes to an hour, we finally were able to get it off by cutting off the parts that weren't stuck and with soap, hot water, and Goo Gone. There was a sticky adhesive, almost super glue type substance in the mask. I'm not sure if this was already like this or someone had done this as a joke while at the party. Not entirely sure, as I don't remember leaving it anywhere before putting it on. My skin was irritated after, and I lost a chunk of my left eyebrow. That alone could have been a Halloween costume all on its own. Okay, first off, I absolutely have heard of the Haunted Mask. That story is actually my favorite from the Goosebumps series, the original series, the OG books and the OG TV show. Carly Beth was that girl. It was just so good, so iconic. I didn't care too much about the more recent remake version, but the classics all day. Now, as for your situation, I actually have something somewhat similar. It didn't have to do with any glue or anything, but my story goes, I forgot what mask it was. I don't think it was from anything. I think it was just like a generic Walgreens mask. So when I was like 7 or 8, I was abnormally large for a 7 or 8-year-old. I've always had a big head too. So on Halloween, I remember putting this mask on and it didn't want to go around my head. So I forced it on And I think after like 20 minutes, it was hot and I wanted a break. And when I tried to take it off, it would not come off because it was stuck. My head was too big. So I remember like my grandma or my dad or someone, they had to like make little cuts on the bottom for me to get it off. Not that scary. Now, my theory for your experience is maybe the mask had some sort of like glue substance from the warehouse that accidentally got shipped out, or someone messed with the mask at the store to be an asshole and you were just the unlucky person to purchase that particular mask. Either way, I'm glad you're okay. Yeah, like I've heard of razor blades in Halloween candy, but never super glue in Halloween masks. Everyone have a safe Halloween. Let's get into sinister subjects. Everyone is raving about the recently released sequel to the 2022 horror film Smile. Smile 2 stars Naomi Scott as Sky Riley, who is this troubled pop star battling addiction and mental health issues. Now, after surviving a deadly car crash that kills someone close to her, then witnessing her Vicodin dealer, who is possessed by the Smile demon, take his own life with a weight, Sky then becomes cursed. Now, I will say that I actually enjoyed this sequel more than the original, but going beyond the supernatural and horror elements, I just want to focus on Naomi Scott's performance as Sky, the pop star. And whether you like the film or not, it's hard to deny how incredible she was. There were moments where I caught myself completely absorbed, mouth open, heart pounding, just mesmerized by Naomi Scott's performance. So, without giving too much away, seeing her character go from a recovering addict who survived a traumatic car accident to witnessing such graphic deaths, then struggling to differentiate between reality and delusion, all while grappling with past traumas and the pressures of fame, people tugging her this way, people tugging her that way. It was a really intense film. And like I said, even setting aside the supernatural aspects, her journey felt raw and deeply emotional, and sadly mirroring reality, which we see a lot with today's celebrities, artists, musicians. And this is kind of like a segue into this next subject regarding former member of the insanely popular boy band One Direction, Liam Payne, who recently passed away under scary circumstances. And it's the way that it was handled that highlights how desensitized and I would even say careless society handles situations like these. So this took place on October 16th, where Liam tragically fell from a third-floor balcony at his hotel in Palmero, Argentina, just 2 days after his girlfriend Kate Cassidy left home from the trip, leaving him behind. And that's when it was reported his behavior started to ramp up. Now, according to a press release from the Argentina National Prosecutor's Office, Payne's death followed a series of troubling events, and the autopsy revealed multiple traumatic injuries and significant internal and external bleeding that ultimately led to his death. Now, earlier that afternoon, emergency responders were called to the Casa Sur Hotel after a 911 call was made by a staff member reporting an aggressive guest. The caller described a man behaving erratically in his room, damaging objects, and possibly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Although Liam Payne's name wasn't mentioned during the call, authorities later confirmed that it was indeed him. So the hotel staff expressed concern for the guest's well-being, especially since the room had a balcony, fearing he might do something dangerous. And just minutes after this call, Payne would fall from the balcony, and when police arrived, they found him with severe injuries. Emergency medical personnel declared him dead on the scene. Further details describe that he suffered from what is described as polytrauma, which is a condition involving multiple traumatic injuries that affected various parts of his body. In Payne's case, he had significant cranioencephalic trauma, severe injuries to his brain and skull, as well as hemorrhaging in the chest, abdomen, and limbs. The internal and external bleeding combined with the trauma to his brain were his cause of death. Forensic experts did note that Payne had a total of 25 injuries, all consistent with the fall from a great height. They also examined his hands and found no defensive injuries, which indicated that he didn't try to shield himself during the fall, because as a natural reaction to the human body, if we were to accidentally fall off of something, like your first instinct is to shield yourself, correct? So this led investigators to believe that he may have been unconscious or semi-conscious at the time, or that it was intentional, suggesting that he obviously didn't protect himself as he was falling. And obviously, I'm not the only podcaster here talking about this. There are hundreds of videos and tabloids talking about this, and it seems they're all assuming that it was an alleged suicide, due to information about Liam being dropped by his record label and other allegations, including that he's an alleged abuser. Based off of further investigation after his death, authorities obtained substances from Payne's hotel room, pointing to potential drug and alcohol use prior to the fall. Preliminary toxicology results indicate that Payne may have had several substances in his system, including pink cocaine, which I've never heard of in my life, but it's apparently a mix of methamphetamine, ketamine, and MDMA, as well as traces of cocaine crack and benzodiazepine. The full report is still pending, though. So this obviously aligns with those earlier reports that the singer may have been struggling with substance abuse in the hours leading up to his death, and Liam has even spoken publicly about his mental health and addiction issues. And what's really fucked up here is there were obviously videos of Liam with fans hours before his death, just showing how happy he seemed interacting with his fans, signing autographs, taking pictures. You can tell he genuinely enjoyed interacting with his fans. But even more fucked and disturbing is the way reports on his death were handled, regardless of what type of person he was. The moment it was reported, TMZ had released the story with zoomed in photos of Liam's dead body, showing his tattoos to reveal that it was really him. Like, who does this kind of reporting? They ultimately removed the photos, but not before thousands of people could screenshot and share the photos elsewhere. This is that desensitization, disrespectful shit I mentioned earlier. And I'm talking about toward his loved ones. It's like with the Diddy controversy, which is continually getting worse as the days go on, but seeing people online cracking jokes, sharing photos of Diddy shirtless, talking about, I would let this man do whatever he wants to me. No. Imagine living through this hell and coming across that. Put yourself in the victim's shoes. What if they were scrolling and they come across a meme like that? How do you think that would make them feel? Similar experience to loved ones of Liam seeing his dead body circulating on social media and TMZ, which then prompted them to speak out and have TMZ take it down. But like, do you see how demented that all sounds? Like, where have we... Like, we're in a space now in society where it is so weird. It's gone so weird. And just to touch on these abuse allegations, recently some serious allegations have come up from Liam Payne's ex-fiancée, Maya Henry, because back in April, she published a fictional book about a model who is dating a pop star, which she claimed was based on actual events. And in the book, the main character goes through an abortion at her partner's demand. And there's a disturbing scene where he even threatens to jump off of a balcony while on drugs. What a very ironic parallel to actual events, right? Now, just days before Payne's passing, Maya mentioned on the Internet is Dead podcast that he was still repeatedly contacting her. Then on October 14th, it was reported that she had filed a cease and desist order against him. And I think we're going to see a shift happen with Hollywood stars and artists where we're going to find out a lot of things that we don't really like. And I think that's going to really change our perception of most. I mean, how far back does this demented behavior with Sean Diddy Combs go back? How long have these beloved celebrities died in these bizarre and unexplained ways? How many times has film given clues about what's really going down in the industry? And I'm not even just talking about films like Smile 2. Scream 3, do we remember that little film? That covered themes and experiences most people described when the Me Too movement came out. And that was 17 years after Scream 3 was released. The crazy, preachy conspiracy theorist is coming out of me right now. But the last thing I want to touch on here is that there's a petition going around to enact legislation to protect the mental health of those in the entertainment industry, which that alone is amazing. And this petition now has over 47,000 people who have signed this to make Liam Payne the face of this, calling it Liam's Law. And there are some extremist takes on this, and I do have to agree with them to an extent, because in a way, I am curious, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to Liam Payne or his family, but did we forget about Britney Spears? Did we forget about Whitney Houston? Did we forget about Amy Winehouse? Did we forget about Lindsay Lohan, who is doing amazing right now? Her redemption story is so inspiring. We're going to move on from this, but more seriously, if you or someone you know is struggling, whether that's with your mental health or addiction, please understand that there are always resources available. Call the Substance Abuse and Addiction Hotline at 1-844-289-0879. You can call or text the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline by dialing or starting a text to 988. Whew. Okay, that was heavy. Okay, let's move on. Horror and Halloween fans are currently feuding with Arianators because the Mistress of the Dark herself, Elvira, whose real name is Cassandra Peterson, has spilled some tea while doing a Q&A at Not Scary Farm, where she shares that she had a very questionable encounter with Ariana Grande 7 years ago. Take a listen.
Okay, she came and she brought 20 guests. She wanted 21 tickets. We're like, okay. And we give her the tickets, and she comes backstage and she asked if I could take pictures with all of her friends and relatives she brought. I take a picture with every single one of them. I sign autographs for every single one of them. Then I say to her, could we take a photo together? She goes, no, I don't really do that. I mean, come on, okay? And then she left before my show started. All her relatives stayed. All her relatives stayed, and she took off. Okay, right?
All true.
Just saying.
All true. She's playing the wrong witch.
You know damn well Elvira was being a little bit petty here. I mean, petty recognized petty. She even posted the clip herself to her Instagram. I feel like Ariana has had a little bit of character development, no? I mean, years ago, she was this kind of diva who was spitting on donuts and having fits on the red carpet. But I think like most people, we grow, we develop, we learn from past behaviors, mostly. Now, to add on to this, Ariana has responded to the clip directly on Cassandra's post. Ariana wrote, I'm so disheartened to see this. I actually don't even remember getting the chance to meet you because I had an anxiety attack and to my memory left before the rest of my family. This was around 7 years ago, and at the time I was really not great with being in public crowds or loud places. But if I'm misremembering this moment, I sincerely apologize for offending you. So thank you for being so nice to my mom. She told me how lovely you were. She might have different feelings about that now, but I'll talk to her. Clearly, we all have our days. Sending love always. You'll always be our queen of Halloween. Now, that's a pretty reasonable and kind response, in my opinion. I mean, we all have bad days, but I could understand Elvira's. Does anyone even call her Cassandra? I feel like she's just Elvira, but I could understand her experience as well. I mean, there's nuanced approaches here from many people, some siding with Elvira while others are claiming that she needed some attention and engagement to feel relevant, disrespectful. On the opposite end, you have some siding with Ariana and others saying that she's playing the victim card and pulling the anxiety conversation out as this way of deflecting criticism or accountability. But to bring it back to the Queen of Halloween versus Ariana, maybe Ariana could have reached out privately. Because in doing this publicly, now there's this sort of hate campaign toward Elvira. But at the same time, I'm just questioning why now? Why now? Yes, Elvira was asked who her worst celebrity run-in was, but did she really have to answer? It's been 7 years, babe. I don't know. Who do you side with? Let me know who you think is right or wrong in the situation. Scream Society Podcast on Instagram. My DMs are always open. Let's take a break. Terrifying but true, listener submissions, and closing out with some Halloween spirit after this.
Welcome to Sorta Kinda Funny. We're a comedy podcast
Brother and sister duo.
where we take your guys' embarrassing moments and stories and turn them into humor because life's about laughing at yourself, and we are sure gonna laugh at ourselves. I am James. I am your main Mac Daddy host, and I'm also joined by a loser. Go ahead and introduce yourself, loser. Go ahead. Don't be shy.
This is Lauren.
Give it to them.
Absolutely.
Baby.
Absolutely. What did you say?
Also, we sing a lot, so if you haven't listened to this first episode, I'm sorry.
We have new episodes available every Thursday and would love nothing more than to hang out with you. Does that sound too desperate?
Yes.
Okay. Check us out wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll see you on Thursday. And as always,
Text me if you want to hang out.
bye.
When the unthinkable becomes reality, we find ourselves questioning everything, as some stories are too terrifying but true. The Green River murders refer to a series of killings that took place in the Seattle and Tacoma areas of Washington state during the 1980s and 1990s. The killer, later identified as Gary Ridgway, is considered one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. His victims, primarily young women and teenage girls, were often vulnerable individuals, including sex workers and runaways. Ridgway would lure them, strangle them, and dispose of their bodies, many of which were found near the Green River. Gary Ridgway was first arrested in 1982 on suspicion of soliciting prostitution, but it wasn't until November 30th, 2001 that he was arrested for the murders. Ridgway's arrest came after advances in DNA technology linked him to several victims. In 1987, investigators had collected DNA samples from Ridgway, but it wasn't until 2001 that DNA testing conclusively tied him to the murders. Ridgway was initially charged with 4 murders, though he later confessed to killing at least 71 women. He ultimately pleaded guilty to 49 counts of murder, making a deal to avoid the death penalty by agreeing to provide details about the locations of more victims. On December 18, 2003, Gary Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ridgway remains incarcerated, and the Green River case stands as one of the darkest chapters in U.S. criminal history due to the high number of victims and the long period over which the crimes were committed. In a recent BuzzFeed article from October 12, 2023, a user going by the name of Meow Mix shared a chilling personal story for a Halloween feature. They revealed that their father had been good friends with the Green River killer, Gary Ridgway, for over a decade. For 10 years, the two men ate lunch together every day, with Ridgway casually parking his truck in the Kenworth lot, completely unaware to the father that at times there were victims' bodies in the back of the truck. Even the people of Ridgway's church had no idea who he really was. The user reflected on how Ridgway could possibly be one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history, especially if his claims about the number of women he murdered are true. If you would like me to share an experience of yours, share something you find creepy or interesting, or simply want to ask me a question, head on over to beacons.ai/The Scream Society and click on the Society submissions link. Remember, everything remains anonymous. Big thanks to this listener for helping me pick this week's terrifying but true case. I had put up a suggestion box on the podcast Instagram asking for ideas on topics and cases, and this person mentioned for me to read some creepy Reddit stories for Halloween, which then got me thinking and doing some research, and I came across a great BuzzFeed article from last Halloween packed with spooky real stories, including a short one about the Green River Killer that caught my attention. After diving into some research, it felt perfect for the terrifying but true segment. So, in the spirit of Halloween, let's explore some more of these, shall we? This first one is submitted by someone by the name of EB17, and their story is: my parents bought a house in the middle of nowhere. The original owner of the house died by suicide in the garage. The next man who owned the house rented the house to a friend. The friend died while living in the house. The man then sold the house to my parents. He died 2 weeks after my parents closed on the house. Before moving in, my dad befriended a couple in town, and after hearing about the house, the wife insisted on coming by and smudging the place. My dad didn't believe in any of the nonsense about the house being haunted or having bad juju, but he let her sage anyway. That didn't do any good though, because my dad died very unexpectedly a few months later in a freak accident at the house. My mom sold the house to a young couple who I'm hoping don't have horrible luck with the place. If I had the extra money laying around, I would have bought the damn thing from my mom just so I could light it on fire. From Anonymous. As a kid, I grew up on a street that was newly developed. There was a vacant lot across the road that led down a hill to a river. I had a reoccurring nightmare that me and my brothers were in the lot picking up rubbish. I'd get to the riverbank, look in the water, and a red demon, traditional devil-looking character, would drag me into the water to drown. I'd wake up terrified. This happened a lot when I was a kid, but as I got older, the dream stopped, and I didn't really mention it to anyone. Fast forward many years later, and my 5-year-old daughter wakes up crying from a bad dream. I comfort her and ask her if she wants to tell me what the dream was about. She tells me, I was in a field picking flowers and I got too close to the river and a red devil dragged me in. I didn't know what to say. It sounded just like my dream from when I was a child. She has had the same dream a few times since as well. From Anonymous. My mom used to call my grandma every single night. However, during a family camping trip when I was 15, she was unable to call her because the cell phone reception was horrible. So, my dad promised we could go to the nearest town for breakfast in the morning so that she could get service and call grandma. But when we got to town, Mom had over a dozen missed calls and voicemails. Most of them were from my cousin who lived across the country. She would always talk about having visions, but my parents and I thought she was full of it. My mom listened to the messages, and my cousin was crying and saying someone was hurting my grandma at the exact moment. She kept asking for my mom to call or go to her because she was being stabbed. My cousin described fire and being suspended in the air. The remaining voicemails from other family members trying to tell my mom that grandma had been murdered. Someone had broken in, stabbed her, tied her up, and then lit the house on fire. It was bad enough that my mom blamed herself because it happened during their usual phone call time, but the intense mix of visions and voicemails is why we don't really talk about my grandmother's death. From user Kelsey J. I used to waitress at a restaurant in a small town. We had regulars that were average people, not big tippers, and sometimes a pain. But for the most part, they were nice. Well, one day, one of them popped up on the news because he had been arrested in connection with his fiance's murder. They hadn't even found her body, and he'd already been convicted of first-degree murder. I fed a murderer on a weekly basis and never knew anything was awry. It's hard to believe some of these are someone's actual experience. For the full list, check the link in the episode description. I think the most creepy one for me here was the vision that the cousin had of the grandmother's death. That is so fascinating and terrifying and heartbreaking all at the same time. Anywho, that's a wrap for this episode. Please have a safe and fun Halloween. If you want more from me, check out some collabs I did. I was on the Super Scary podcast where we discussed the 2022 film Smile. And coming out on Halloween, I was a guest on Sex Ed with Tim, which was a really fun conversation. So make sure to check those out and give them both a follow. But until next time, I will scare you all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into the Scream Society podcast, hosted, written, produced, and edited by yours truly, Ralph Anthony. Help the society grow by subscribing on your favorite platform and leave a rating and review. I always strive for 5s. Have a horror or paranormal experience? Want me to answer your questions on the show? Submit to beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Scream Society Podcast. And until next time, I'll scare you on the next episode.